Have you ever found yourself struggling to make a decision? Not sure which way to go because either one has its good and its bad, and you end up stuck not making a decision at all. Right, let's talk about this. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for being part of this. Appreciate the support, the shares, and also the new subscriptions. If you are here for the first time, this is the BVoy Project, just a channel where we talk about how to be the best version of yourself in any aspects that you can think of. And if you find this useful and helpful in any way to yourself or to anyone else that you can think of, please kindly like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out when we post this. Right, so the topic of today is decision making under uncertainty. Now, this is a concept that a lot of people will resonate with. There's many times on a daily basis for some of us where we have to make a decision. It's difficult to make certain decisions, but the more difficult the decision is, the more likely it is that there's two options or more that are kind of similar, where the bads are almost similar, the good are almost similar, and you're kind of thinking, oh, so what do I do? Or sometimes we don't make a decision because we're not entirely sure about what exactly we're deciding. We don't have enough information to make a decision, and the stakes are high, right? So in your perspective, the stakes are high. Now, this could be in business form or it could be in your personal. Now, what we're going to talk about today are things that can hopefully assist in terms of making decisions, making it slightly easier, and also being okay with making a bad decision, because sometimes you don't know that the decision is bad until the outcome hits. And before the outcome hits, some of the things are really hard to predict. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So ultimately, how to make decisions when you've got a severe amount of uncertainty. Right, let's go into it. Decision making under uncertainty is essentially choosing a course of action when you lack full information. Not only that, it's when the consequences are unpredictable and execution errors are expected. So as you can understand, this is the difficult thing to do. This is a difficult way of assessing this. And there's two aspects I want us to understand, which I'm going to go through today. Now, the first one is core decision making. What is it exactly that we're supposed to do in terms of core decision making? And we're going to break this down into a few things. Now, the other one is strategic execution for an imperfect action. Now, the important part is the action is imperfect. I know usually whenever we're looking at things like this or decisions that we're trying to make, we want to ideally make the perfect decision that elicits the perfect outcome, essentially. But sometimes we have to accept that the decisions that we're going to make are going to be imperfect, not because you chose the one that's imperfect and there's a perfect one. No, both decisions would be imperfect anyway. Now we need to try to assess which one is going to be a better imperfect. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So firstly, on the core decision, now there's four aspects I want us to understand. The first one is expected value. Now, expected value, what's that? Now, this is essentially looking at what is the value of the things that I'm making a decision on, okay? So value as in, what am I gaining if this works very well? What am I losing if this doesn't work very well? So we look at the value versus the prediction, as in the chances of it happening. What would be the value of this if it were to happen? This would be absolutely fantastic. So this is like leaping into the future and thinking, if the outcome that I'm hoping for were to happen and this is what happens, how good would this be? What would be the value of this? And you live in that, essentially. And you think, right, this would be absolutely fantastic. This would be the greatest value that I would want. And then you put that together with, what are the chances of it happening? What are the chances of that value happening? If I were to make this decision, this would be great, but what are the chances of it happening? And then you can put a lot of aspects around it to think, what are the chances of this particular thing happening? Now, if the chances are low and the value is really high, you can sort of grade that as well. And then you look at a different outcome as well, a value. What would be the value of this? Maybe the value is a bit lower, but the chances of it happening are a lot higher. And then you can do that for different values. Now, this is actually used scientifically. They can do that as a calculation. It's a mathematical calculation where you can look at the expected value, probability, and putting that together, the value versus the chances, the value chances. You can do that yourself actually and write down all of the possibilities. If I were to make this decision, what could happen? This could happen. How great would that be? You can rate it as a value. You can put it from 0 to 10, 10 being the best absolute value. This would be absolutely fantastic. And then you can grade all of these values by that number. And then the chances, you can do that as well for the chances. What are the chances that this could happen? What are the chances? If it's next to impossible, then the chances are at 0. If it's a really big possibility that this could happen, then the chances are at 10. You can do that as a calculation and take the numbers down. That calculation could actually tell you which one of the decisions you're going to make is most likely going to be the best one for you based on the value and the chances of it happening. Now, it's called expected value calculation. This is something that you guys can look up. All right, that's one. The next one is called maximin, which is being a little bit pessimistic. So we say pessimistic. There's some people that will look at it and say, well, that's actually being realistic, but a bit pessimistic. And the pessimistic aspect of it is looking at what's the worst that could happen. Now, there's someone that I listened to recently who was talking about their ADHD. One of the things that they did was they struggled to do certain things because the anxiety grew so much within them that they stopped. So one of the things that they did to actually push them forward is to, again, leap into the future and picture the absolute worst thing that could happen in that particular scenario. Play it all out in your head, the absolute worst case that could happen, play it out in your head, and then come back. Now, you can experience something bad in your head without it happening physically, and then you can actually just come back into reality. Now, what you can then do at that point, because sometimes the brain can't tell if it's real or not. So you've actually experienced something and you've come out of it theoretically, and you can sit there and talk yourself through this. If that worst case scenario that I've just taken myself through were to happen, and then what? If you find yourself thinking, well, I actually just went through that, and then what? You've kind of like theoretically gone through it, you'll probably find yourself in a bit more comfortable or courageous position to be able to go through it anyway. And the best part about it, most worst case scenarios that we can think of never happen. So that's the maximin, which is the pessimistic aspect of looking at this decision making. So in the decisions you're trying to make, which one could be the worst and what's the worst that could happen in the decision that you end up making. So the next one that we're going to look at is maximax. Okay, so we've just looked at maximin. Now we're looking at maximax. The maximax is actually the optimistic version of it. Looking at it from the optimistic viewpoint of it, let's look at what's the best case scenario. What could work really well? What could be the best thing that could happen for making this decision? Okay, for deciding whichever way you want to go. What could be the best thing that could happen? And then you walk through that. You enjoy that as if it's actually happening. You put yourself in it in your mind and you play it through, really enjoy it, feel it, and then you can step back. Now, in doing that, as a contrast to the maximin, you can find yourself in a position where you could end up balancing it out and finding yourself in a position where you think, you know what, if it works out, it will be absolutely fantastic. And if it doesn't work out, it wouldn't be really that bad. So it might give you a bit of courage to be able to move forward anyway in making that decision. Okay, so that's the maximax. So finally, on the aspect of core decision-making frameworks is the minimax, which is the minimax regret. Minimax regret. So essentially on the minimax regret, what we're saying is minimize the maximum. I'll explain. Minimize the maximum. There's going to be the chosen payoff that you've settled for, and then there will be the best possible payoff that you will have in your head that you'll be thinking of. The difference between the maximum payoff and the chosen payoff, that realm there can cause regret. Well, if I had done this, I could have had that. If I had done that, I could have had that. And then it starts building a bit of regret. Now, this is the aspect of minimizing that maximum. Reduce that regret and look at it as an aspect of where you are now is actually far better than where you could have been. Chances are the gap between where you could have been down here, if you hadn't made a decision at all, would have been worse off. That gap there is probably bigger than the gap between where you are and another maximum possibility. The maximum possibility would have been the perfect scenario, which we all know is really, really highly improbable. So chances are you probably wouldn't have got there anyway. But a lot of us will beat ourselves up and look at where we are versus where we could have been, but looking up instead of where we are compared to where we could have been downwards if we hadn't made the decision. So this is the concept of minimizing the maximum, reducing the regret, and trying to work through it. Okay, so that's the first aspect of it, which was the core decision making frameworks. If we can actually look at that, firstly, the expected value, the maximin, which is the pessimistic aspect of it, the maximax, which is the optimistic version, and then the minimax, regret, which is minimizing the maximum. Okay, now the next aspect that I would like us to look at is the strategic execution. Okay, so the imperfection or imperfect action. So this is where I was talking about at the start, where we say every action you're going to make in the decisions that you're going to make is going to probably be imperfect. Okay, so whether you choose to do A or choose to do B, there's imperfections in it. Let's be okay with it. Now, which one of the imperfection or which one of the imperfect decisions are the best imperfect ones, which is what we want to look at. So the first aspect I'd like you to look at is iterative execution. Okay, essentially what that means is fast decision making. Okay, now I mentioned at the start of this video that there's times where you have uncertainty when you need to make a decision, and you have so much uncertainty and you find yourself thinking, right, what do I do here? And it takes you longer to make a decision because you're thinking, well, if I do this or if I do that, this could happen, that could happen. And not making a decision is actually a decision. And we believe that not making a decision is actually imperatively worse for you than actually making either one of the decisions. So the iterative execution is the aspect of actually reducing the time of when you know you need to make a decision and the point that you actually make that decision. And there's a 4-step stage that I would like you to look at, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. So just look at what the situation is, understand the whole concept of it as quickly as you can, which is the context of it. Understand it, decide which way to go, whether you actually decided theoretically. We talked earlier on about actually taking yourself into the future and saying, if I make this decision, what could possibly happen? Or if I make that decision, what could possibly happen? In looking at chances, probabilities, and the value of it. And then finally, once you've actually had that basic aspect of understanding, go for it. And in some cases, if you make a decision and actually act on it and it's the wrong one, you'll find out a lot quicker that it's the wrong one, and you might have a chance to actually change. Now, there's many people that will find themselves at the start of the pool, okay, and we need to swim. You're at the start and you're thinking about it and you're considering, right, which stroke is it the back stroke, is it the front stroke, breast, or whichever way. You're making too much of a decision at the start, and someone just jumps in, they get it wrong, and then they change whilst they're moving, and they get it wrong, and then they change whilst they're moving, and they get it wrong and they change. But the difference between the two people is one is thinking of the perfect move still at the starting point, the other one is figuring it out as they're moving, and as you can see between the two of them, one has gone, the other one hasn't. Okay, now if we look at the worst case scenario in every situation, chances are we'll end up being numb and not moving at all. So the first part is iterative execution. Reduce the timeline of when you know you need to make the decision and actually deciding and acting, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. Okay, the next part of it is targeted information gathering. Okay, so if the perfect information is too costly or time consuming to find, then consider working with other people. Consider someone else giving you advice, someone who has the experience of what you're trying to achieve. Reduce the timeline, because a lot of times we want to do everything ourselves. I'll find the information myself, I will act myself, I will implement these decisions on my own, and the time slot is actually increased. So if there's a possibility that the finding of information, of the ideal information, is going to take far too long, maybe instead of what, you need to figure out who. Okay, so who do I need to work with, who do I need to speak to, instead of what information do I need to get. All right, so this is the aspect of target information gathering. The next part is hedging bets or diversification. Now, if you find yourself in a situation where you found the information and the information still muddled you up a little bit, and you've done the iterative action and you know that this is a decision that I need to make based on the information that I found, but either one, I'm still not quite sure, or it's still too 50-50 for my liking, the next part is what's going to be important. It's hedging bets or diversification. If it is possible in that situation, then don't go into just the one. If it's possible, you can actually hedge bets. Do one thing and do another and do another as well, so that you can spread and diversify, so that if one of them is definitely the wrong thing to do, then you don't fully completely lose out. You can potentially then hedge your bets on something else that does work. Now, this is depending on whatever the situation is. The hedging bets aspect might not be relevant for your particular decision at the moment, but where possible, see if you can actually diversify. Now, this is information that I was sharing today, which I hope has been helpful to you guys in terms of making decisions in uncertainty, and something that can help you to move forward. As usual, guys, if you find any of this information useful, if you have anything else you want to be adding or anything you want to challenge, questions you might have, feel free to drop them in the comments. We respect you, and we also request that you respect others when you actually put the comments in, so that we can help each other and work our way through this together. So if you find any of this useful, please feel free to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the videos when we post them again. Take care, guys. Hope you have a lovely day and a week, and I'll speak to you soon.